Hello and welcome to episode 15 of Baki Taki. We've got a good episode today. We've got more Mr. Oliver than really I can handle. And to help me walk through all of this, we've got a special guest. I can't keep saying a special guest. If every guest is a special guest, then none of them are special guests. But not to take away from my guest today, Ryan.
Hey, Steve. Thanks so much for having me. Hey, Baki Taki crew.
I'm glad that you're bringing that back. Hallie will be quite happy to hear the Baki Taki crew is getting some reps. So yeah,
Well, it's got to start somewhere.
exactly. So as you might have pointed out, so you are somebody who has actually listened to every episode of the podcast.
As of recording, yeah. So that is 13. I believe you're going to be posting number 14 this Sunday. And that is all I have been exposed to Baki, is just through your recaps and your guest reactions. So it's been really interesting seeing how the show has played out in my mind, and then to come in 15 episodes later and actually put a face to some of these characters and experience it for myself was really something.
I can't wait to get your thoughts. So that sort of answers the first question I always ask, or the second question. So to rewind a bit, Ryan, other than Baki, what shows are you currently watching?
Yeah, so I am currently on a bit of a Star Wars binge. Just got Disney Plus like a month ago. And, after watching Obi-Wan, I decided, I should probably catch up on some other programming. Watched Mandalorian for the first time. Phenomenal, like absolutely incredible. Boba Fett as well. And then I even watched some of the animated Star Wars stuff. So like, Rebels, The Bad Batch. And that's really been my focus outside of an episode of Seinfeld here and there.
Seinfeld is basically Star Wars, or Star Wars, I guess, is the Seinfeld of space. When you boil it down, they're both sort of about nothing.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So let's dive into this episode because a lot happens. And man, I'm just sort of realizing this whole season, at least so far, has just been Mr. Oliver's arc. So at the end of the last episode, Mr. Oliver punched Sikorsky so hard that he flew out of a building, much like the end of episode 13, but this time it was Sikorsky who flew out the window. And we get a nice little interaction between Oliver, Sanada, and Baki. Ryan, do you want to sort of walk me through this conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. So first thing I noticed was that Sikorsky is naked. And I had the exact same thought. I think it was 2 episodes back. The guy who pumped Mr. Oliver full of shotgun pellets.
Oh, Jeff.
Jeff, that's right. So Jeff met a similar fate. That's instantly what I was thinking. I actually had to stop the episode to make sure I was watching the right one. But I guess they just reused that scene. But Sikorsky totally naked. And, of course, I'm thinking to myself, why is this guy naked? And I felt really great not being the only one to think that, because immediately after landing on the ground and, Sanada, Sikorsky, and Baki are just, hanging out on the pavement, you have one of the background characters saying, "Why is he naked?" But to go into like the meat of it, Mr. Oliver presents Sikorsky to Sanada. He says, "Yep, he survived that fall. Here he is, 1 criminal down, 3 to go." The other 3, or the other 2 being Doyle and remind me of the other person?
Ryuko Yanagi.
Yanagi. Okay. So
Yanagi the poisoner.
Oh, he's the poisoner. Okay. So I was forgetting what everyone's gimmicks were, but yeah. So, anyways, basically hands over Sikorsky to Sanada. Sanada tells him, "Yeah, we'll be in touch with more information." And he says, "Dude, why even bother? Just go home, relax, take a beer. I'll take care of it." At that point, he turns to Baki, and they have quite the interaction.
Did you catch when he was talking to Sanada? He literally did like a little finger wag at him, like, you guys can stay at home. I got this.
Come on, there's no need to play the hero here. You and your top men can just sit back, relax, have a beer, and wait for my call.
I didn't catch that, but it doesn't throw me off.
Yeah, so Baki and Oliver in the last episode, they actually both were beating up Sikorsky. And so Baki starts asking Oliver basically like, I've never seen a martial arts style like yours before. And I don't think Oliver explicitly says this, but the thing is, Oliver doesn't have a martial arts style. He's just a big guy. And he's really strong. And we'll see more of this in the judo scenes later. But it leads to a great scene where Oliver describes his advantage as basically coming from the power of love. And he gives Baki a really big hug.
And I've never seen a style of martial arts like that before. It's like what? A lot of protein to get your body to bulk up?
You know as well as I. There is nothing in this world that could make a man stronger than the power of love.
Yes, that was very noteworthy. I took down the whole quote. So after Baki just admires Oliver's physique, you know, they do a pan up from just above the crotch up to the abs to his chest. And Baki says with admiration, he's even got sweat coming down the side of his face. He says, "You're really strong. Never seen a martial arts style like that. So what do? Just like drink a lot of protein to bulk up?" And then Oliver says, "Oh man, you know as well as I, there's nothing in this world that can make a man stronger than the power of love." That's my best Oliver impersonation. And the hug really sealed it. I was like, all right, we're off to a great start.
Yeah. And the funniest thing is, like, this is not an offhanded comment. Like, this is a core part of Oliver's character, and honestly, it's a big part of Baki's character arc this season, is learning to harness the power of love. So we aren't going to touch too much on that in that episode, but keep an eye on Baki this season before he gets poisoned. Then it's a lot less inspiring. But
Oh, jeez.
yeah. One guess on who poisons him, by the way.
Got me there.
Anyway, so the first scene, pretty basic, and we're left with Oliver going back to the police station. He's now very quickly got 2 of the death row inmates he was looking for, or actually just one. Yeah, just Sikorsky. So he has 2 left, Doyle and Yanagi. And so he's on his little computer. He's got an office at the Tokyo Metro Police building. And then a very tall policewoman comes in to give him a cup of coffee.
Come on in.
Sorry to disturb you. I brought you some coffee.
How would you describe this policewoman, Ryan?
Well, I gotta say, Steve, first time I saw her, I was really happy that, you know, musculature was not limited to the male characters. She was quite intimidating. And she comes in, drops off the coffee, you know, says to Oliver, which, by the way, Steve, do listeners know Oliver's first name, or do we just refer to him as Mr. Oliver?
We talked about this in the episode that hasn't aired yet. But yes, Biscuit Oliver is his full name.
I love that. I only caught it because I actually read the Netflix description before the episode. But anyways, Biscuit's just he's just hanging out. He takes a sip, and his eyes just go wild, and he's like,
Is this Blue Mountain?
as if it's supposed to mean something. I don't know. Maybe it's just
I
him.
looked it up. It's a real type of coffee.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Awesome. But yeah, he takes a sip, and he goes back to looking at the screen, and you know, this woman comments, like, "Whoa, who's that man? He's really scary." And of course, he's looking at a picture of Doyle. And I gotta say, Doyle is much prettier than I thought he would be. Very, very angular face, very clearly Asian, if not Japanese, but the red hair to prove that he's Irish.
He's the looker of the group.
Oh, really?
I don't know. I wouldn't say anyone else. Definitely looks nicer than Spec.
Oh, jeez. What, 76 years old, whatever he ended up being?
97.
Oh my god, that's crazy. Anyways, the identity comment, I think, is actually rather apt because, you know, after she makes that comment and Oliver, you know, kind of acknowledges it and says, "Yeah, I know, you could be anywhere right now." Instantly, you hear a slightly deeper voice saying,
Maybe even right behind you?
and lo and behold, surprise, the woman was actually Doyle in disguise.
I love the fact that, like, for a minute you were like, finally a muscular woman on this show. Because it's really like an immediate tell that it's like a man dressed as a woman, if you're familiar with it.
To be honest, Steve, that did not click for me immediately.
So Doyle has snuck into the police department because remember, the end goal for all these guys is they want to taste defeat. So Mr. Unchained is a perfect target for that. So Doyle snuck in, and this is his master plan. So he wants to poison Oliver to weaken him so that he can, more easily beat him in a fight. Now, I'm sure what you're all thinking is, oh, he poisoned the coffee that Mr. Oliver just drank. But no, he didn't poison the coffee. Instead, after taking off his wig and revealing that it was him all along, he uses his knife elbow to slash Oliver's face, poisoning him directly. I thought that was overkill and also just inefficient. What did you think?
I gotta say, what stuck out to me the most is, when I first saw that initial swipe, I thought, okay, he just got an elbow to the face. It's then when Oliver is standing a few feet back and this scar just suddenly appears on his face and blood starts gushing out. It's kind of like that that classic anime trope where, the sword comes out super fast and then the other person just like, they think, he missed me. But a second later, his body starts to like cut in half. I kind of got that vibe from it. But yeah, much easier to poison the cup of coffee, I would think.
Yeah. And, like, I think you could control the dosage more because clearly he didn't use enough poison. But also, it should be clear, I keep saying poison. It's a hallucinatory drug that he's trying to use, not technically a poison. He has a huge gashing wound on his face, but it stops bleeding because, in his own words, the adrenaline's pumping.
How'd you manage to stop the bleeding already?
It's the adrenaline flooding into my system.
But then he proceeds to lock the door, very like Rorschach, like you're locked in here with me type of scenario, and then say,
"It's been a long-ass time. It's rare that I come across anyone brave enough to face me man to man. Well, I mean, you're dressed up like a woman, but you know what I'm getting at."
Of course, then he finds out he's been drugged, falls over, gets kicked in the face a few times. Oliver is... I think it's fair to say that he is the strongest fighter we've seen actually fight on this show. He's one of the strongest fighters in the show. The only character, I think, who's actually stronger than him at this point that we've even met is Yujiro, who has done nothing in 15 episodes.
Didn't he kick a cigarette or something?
He did kick a cigarette, yes. But I'm not going to scale that into... not going to scale the cigarette compared to other fighters.
Fair enough.
But I was going to say, the problem with Oliver is he fights like a complete idiot. Like, he always gets punched in the face multiple times. He always gets, like, thrown on his back. And in this fight, I think he loses a bucket worth of blood.
Oh, yeah.
But the problem is then 2 seconds later, he just chuckles, stands up, and then just goes,
"Thanks, Doyle. That kick was a nice wake-up call."
Editor Steve here. Sorry just in general for these clips. The background music in them is so loud. I don't know what's going on. Oh, well now let's really fight.
Yeah, essentially. But you kind of hit on a good point there. This whole fight up to this point really felt like a turn-based fighting game. Like one person stands there, takes the punishment, then the next moment they're the ones dishing the punishment, all the while blood's being splattered across this data processing room or his office at the police HQ. And I gotta ask myself, like, is this part of the appeal of the show, just seeing this punishment being dealt? Because I thought, okay, seeing someone get beat up is yeah, I guess it could be like satisfying if you want to like drive home a point that one person's stronger. But the other person's just sitting there taking it. Like, I don't know, man. It's I expected for a show to be totally focused on fighting, there to be a little more effort in the choreography.
I think the appeal of the show is Doyle's sweet leopard thong that he's wearing.
I'm glad you pointed that out too, because he went all out with that with that disguise.
Don't beat yourself up. You're not the first man unable to tie me down.
And you really get to see it when the tide turns in the battle, and Oliver grabs him by the ankle and starts hurling him around the room with one hand. Doyle even marvels at this. And as he's flying every which way direction, you got a nice couple good shots of the leopard print panties, which A for effort.
Well, I think it was like a Speedo. I think it was like a more unisex underwear that he was wearing.
Oh yeah, perhaps.
just to give my 2 cents there. But I did want to circle back to your point. I do. The thing is, I think that to have a fight where it's more like give and take and that type of stuff, like Baki is really a game of rock paper scissors. Like it's always you do something and it either is better than your opponent or it's worse than your opponent. Like, do you punch somebody? Is your punch like a 3rd degree black belt punch that you've trained your entire life? Then that'll hit. But if your punch is just a regular punch and the other guy has rubbed salt over his skin for the last few weeks, then that won't work. And I think that yes, it makes sense for a show that's all about fighting to have more dynamic fights, but I don't think that is the style that Baki is about. It's a thought experiment at its core. It wants to tell you what if you do X and your opponent is Y, what will happen.
Okay, that makes it a little more palatable, I'll say. Seeing the cause and effect being such a central part of it, I'll give you that.
But yes, I did really enjoy Oliver's move where he lifts up Doyle and swings him around. I've been re-listening to some of my episodes lately, and I've realized I've used the phrase "like the Hulk would do" probably like 8 times. But I would say that this move is literally what the Hulk does to Loki in the Avengers, where he just picks him up by his leg and throws him around the room. So this fight, at this point, Doyle's basically lost. It goes a bit back and forth where like some people knock on the door, Oliver makes them leave. Oliver picks Doyle up, cuts his hand on razor blades that was inside his collar.
Man, you look terrible. Huh? A razor? In his collar?
There are razors in the collar.
For probably the 8th time this season. And then gets stabbed in the gut, but Oliver's muscles are too strong.
Like a 5-inch blade to pierce his vital organs. Yeah.
Yeah, it's honestly like a Crocodile Dundee knife, which he later describes as like...
It'll take a lot more than a dinky little knife like this to get anywhere near my vital organs.
Yeah, I guess I thought it was just 5 inches because it's probably a pretty intimidating knife in the hands of a giant. So, yeah, you bring up a very good point there. Actually, if you don't mind, I just want to like rewind a bit because
sure.
During this back and forth, there's one part where Oliver just takes Doyle and slams him into the ground so hard that throughout the police HQ and actually out onto the street, there's these like reverberations, right? And people are like, "Oh, yeah. Wow, that was loud. Is that an earthquake?"
What was that? An earthquake? I don't know.
And as you said, that's what triggers the police officers to come by, knock on the door. Yeah, it's like, everything okay in there? It's like, oh yeah, sorry, just knocked down a chair. How clumsy of me. And to my surprise, one of them was like, yeah, I don't buy it. But instead of risk going in and checking it out, they just say, all right, well, if you need any help, we're around. And at this point, Oliver turns back to Doyle, who's basically the breath has been knocked out of him. He's on the ground, and he actually references something that Doyle said prior to the start of the fight. And Doyle, when he caught him off guard at the beginning, he said, tell me, if I'm in a police station, does that mean that I'm in custody? And at this point, when Oliver's staring him down, he says, you know, you made a comment earlier about being in a police station. And he flipped it around on him. He said,
Now that the policemen are no longer around, would you say that means that you'll be saved? Or not?
and I gotta be honest with you, this was single-handedly the most badass line of the show. I genuinely enjoyed it. I really did.
Yeah, no, I thought that was pretty sweet. I think Oliver is a good guy to give badass lines to. I enjoyed the fact that when he literally shook the building in resounding area, I like the idea of like the Japanese Geological Society like phoning the police and being like, oh, we just picked up something on the Richter scale. What was it? And like, oh, a chair fell down. Yeah, no, it's a good line by Oliver, and it really shows that he's just on another tier than these death row inmates.
100%.
He's the freest man alive. The fun thing that happens next, so after this whole scene ends, we cut forward to Sanada and Goki Shibukawa, who we haven't seen in a few episodes, the judo and aiki master, who apparently teaches the police judo. So he's just chilling out in the police station. And so Mr. Sanada and Goki Shibukawa decide to pay a visit to Mr. Oliver. When they get there, of course, Doyle has snuck out a ventilation shaft, and the room is just covered in blood everywhere. So obviously Sanada is a bit like, what just happened here? Ryan, what did just happen there?
Oh, man. Immediately, Oliver just looks at Sanada straight in the eye and says, I'll tell you, but first I got a question.
It's like a bloodbath in here. So what happened? First I got a question for you. What the hell kind of vicious training program are your police women getting here?
And they're like, huh? He says, yeah. All I did was, flirt with her a little, told her I liked her smile.
All I did was flirt a little. Told her I liked her smile. Then said, come on, give me your number. And for that, I got punched, kicked, slashed, and stabbed in the gut.
Next thing I know, she's hacking and slashing me. I got stabbed. You got stabbed? Yeah, here. He lifts up his shirt. And and so now it's just like, so this all happened, and she escaped through a ventilation shaft. He's like, you are a good detective.
Man, you really are an amazing detective.
And
That was such
I
a
gotta
great
be honest,
line.
yeah. I mean, this is great. This is more of the Baki that I was expecting because, instead of just going right out and saying, hey, Doyle came to me, fought Doyle, and, made it pretty clear cut. Not like he's trying to hide anything. I mean, he literally just finished taking down one of the three criminals he was brought in to subdue. But instead of saying that, he kind of plays into the whole scenario and says, oh, yeah, one of your police women just really gave me a run for my money. And that's left like that.
I think the thing is, it ties into his earlier line where he was basically saying, like, leave this to me, which is the correct assumption because the entire police department would be murdered if they fought Doyle in a fight.
That's a good point.
But him just being like, oh, who knows? I fought a policewoman. Doyle hasn't been here. Like, I honestly think he's using the police department because he has a nice office there and wants nothing else to do with them.
Data processing room number 2, Steve.
Yeah, they gave him. They didn't even give him data processing room number 1. Poor guy.
No, that's for the vicious police women.
So we get a really fun interaction here where Mr. Oliver, as we know, a very well-read man, actually knows about Goki Shibukawa and asks him to demonstrate his aiki. So Shibukawa, we've talked about before, is the guy who can throw anybody. And he's very much about the idea of, we've all heard of like the little guy who knows martial arts and is able to defeat the big guy, like the David and Goliath. And that's Shibukawa to a T. Like, he's probably 5'1", and also like probably 65. He doesn't look nearly as threatening as 90% of the cast of Baki, especially next to Mr. Oliver. So Mr. Oliver goes for the handshake and then does the asshole move of just squeezing his hand as hard as he can. And then Shibukawa, using the martial art I would call magic, manages to reverse the move and just make Oliver start screaming out in pain because of just how good leverage he has. I don't know.
Yeah, I found that to be quite the display, because like I'm trying to picture where did that come from? How does that make sense at all? And seeing this David completely turn it around on Goliath, magic really is the only way that I could think of. I mean, you know, it's just in the simplest way possible. They quickly showed that Shibukawa is not to be messed with. He is a master for good reason.
Honestly, it's making me realize the Bible would be so much better if instead of like using a slingshot, David just like shook hands with Goliath and like subdued him that way. That would be rad.
Oh yeah, 100%. Seeing the film adaptations too.
The film adaptation of the Bible?
Yeah, you haven't
the BCU,
honestly,
the Biblical Cinematic Universe.
I mean, you really could. That thing is it's quite the read. But like I want to point out something that really caught my attention and made me chuckle. So one thing I've noticed with Oliver in this episode is how his face lights up whenever he's given the opportunity for a challenge. And while it's not said that he seeks what these, death row convicts are seeking, and that is to taste defeat, he really does revel at a challenge. And I know we'll talk about this in a little bit in the judo scene, but like when he meets Shibukawa and he extends his arm and says, "It's an honor to meet you," or actually even before that, when he insinuates that he'd like to challenge Mr. Shibukawa, his eyes just like, they're like a kid who's about to get like some candy, or I almost imagine it's like a heroin junkie who's shooting up. Like, his pupils get really, really dilated. And
he's very expressive, and I do love him for that. Like in a show where there's so many gruff, cool guys, it's fun to have somebody who like really shows his happiness and shows his emotion. Yeah,
you're right. He is very expressive, and Sanada says something that I think is just hilarious. When Shibukawa entertains this thought of challenging him, Sanada looks like, "Oh, look, master, I don't doubt your skills at all, but
while Oliver may appear obese, I assure you everything you see is 100% pure muscle."
While Oliver may appear obese, I can assure you that 100% of what you see is pure muscle.
Oliver should have kicked his ass right then. That's so rude.
He's heard it all before. But in exactly the fashion you described, Shibukawa puts down Oliver and suggests, taking him into custody because, as per his story, he had assaulted an officer of the law.
A very feisty policewoman, but yeah, exactly. and so they do that. And then when I was rewatching the episode to take notes, I forgot this happened because we get a very quick, like 30-second scene where we see Doyle taking the subway in what has to be the most extravagant way I've ever seen someone save $3. So Doyle, they never really explain where these guys live until they have to. So like we know Dorian had his underground lair. We know Sikorsky had his very weird above ground lair. It appears that Doyle lives in like caves underneath the subway, and to get around he waits for the subway to come by and then grabs onto it with his hand, almost like how Spider-Man would do it. So he flies along on the outside of the subway on one hand, and just for a reference, he doesn't hide himself. Everybody in the subway can see him do this and goes, "Whoa."
Yeah, that's that was quite the scene. Initially, I'll be honest with you, I thought that this was going to be it for Doyle. He sees the train coming,
Oh, like he's like, I've
realized-
tasted defeat. This is
Yeah, for a split second I thought that, but then I thought to myself, okay, like, realistically, we haven't seen much of this character. He's got at least one more episode in him, and the next thing I know, he's Spider-Maning onto the train.
Well, that's a super logical assumption, and I'm gonna get into this a lot, so I won't get into it now. But Sikorsky and Doyle have been defeated. Like we watched it; they both lost, but they have very personal, very stupid definitions of defeat. So they're both gonna be around and defeated many more times before we finally get rid of them.
Oh, good fun.
Yeah. Anyway, so the last scene of the episode, Shibukawa is bringing Oliver through the police building when they eventually see the judo room where all of the police officers practice judo.
Ah, stop! I'm going, okay? Come on, please. I'm cooperating. You don't have to be so rough. This is some police brutality bullshit.
Oliver says one of my favorite lines.
Judo.
Ever practiced judo, Mr. Oliver?
Nah, never tried it myself. But if I did, I'm pretty sure I'd snag a gold medal within a day or two of learning how to do it.
Which is completely true. Gold medalists in this universe exist only to die to martial artists. But he eventually decides to try out some judo. How does it go? How does Oliver do at judo? Is he a good fit for the sport?
Well, I can tell you what he's not a good fit for, Steve, and that is the gi that he gave them. He is given the largest sized uniform, gi being the uniform in judo, and he has to rip off the sleeves so that he has more room to breathe or more room to work with.
You've got to be kidding me. This thing is way too small, Sonoda.
And this gets some stares from the fighters in the gym, but immediately he steps up to plate to fight this other guy who he's buff in his own right. Don't get me wrong; like, these fighters are really they've definitely got some muscle on them.
It's a bunch of muscular men in this gym. Like, even by Baki standards, like, these guys are pretty jacked.
You could almost say they're packing tremendous muscular power.
That is the title of the episode.
All right. But he's still shorter than Oliver, right? I'd say, at least as far as I remember, he's still a little shorter. He's purely thinking that he will win based on his mastery of judo, which is made very clear to Oliver that it's more than just physical strength. It is a mindset. It's being able to use your wits and basically, I don't want to say outplay, but really outmaneuver, outmatch your opponent.
Outwit, outlast.
Yeah, it's Survivor in a martial art.
Yeah.
So Oliver takes this. I'm assuming he's like, all right, whatever. And so they gear up, and by gear up I mean, and I don't know the starting positions or what it's called, but the fighter puts his hands on the collar of Oliver's gi and says, all right, this is how we're going to start. Oliver instinctively does the same to the other guy. He's like, wait, that's not how we do things here. Then slowly, through pure physical strength, he pushes this fighter who puts up a decent fight. I'll be honest. Like, he stays up, but he pushes him right to the ground, all the while like contorting his face, like his eyes are bulging out. Like, you can tell this fighter is putting up quite a lot of effort to just stay upright. And so he smashes this guy to the ground. Everyone's in shock. They're like, is that even a judo move? But I guess it counts as a victory because the fight is over.
It feels like one of those, like, I feel like there's all those, like, viral videos, where it's like, put one arm behind your back and try to lift a chair, and then, like, you can't do it because your body's just not built that way. And I feel like it was supposed to be putting Oliver in that situation, and he just does it because he is just stronger than the other guy. I also think that this episode has very contradictory messages, where in the previous scene, we see that technique is able to beat raw strength. And then in this scene, we learn that no, raw strength is able to beat technique. So there's definitely indecisiveness in the themes here. On the topic, though, of raw strength, I said this in the last episode that hasn't aired yet, that I'm going to stop saying that we meet the biggest guy we've ever met on the show. But we do it again this week with a guy who must be 9 feet tall and
Easily.
probably 8 feet wide. I think his name was Tawaria. And I wrote down that he's probably bigger than his police horse.
Tawaria, the behemoth of the Metropolitan Police Department.
Oh yeah, 100%. He's the behemoth of the Metropolitan Police Department. The guy eats, 12 eggs every morning raw, then the hen that laid them.
Yeah.
This guy is an absolute monstrosity. And, he stands up to Oliver, and you think, okay, now there's going to be like a good showdown to end the episode. Or they're going to cut it right here and then, leave it to start off the next episode. And I don't know, Steve, do you want me to describe what happens, or should I leave it to you? So, in very much the same fashion, after, seeing this guy come up to him, Oliver takes his hands, grabs him by the gi, and then starts spinning him around him like a merry-go-round. Just picks him right off the floor, and like a helicopter just goes around and around and around and around.
It's literally how Mario would defeat Bowser. Like, just throwing him around in a continuous circle.
Oh yeah, his inspiration is definitely Mario. And, in doing this, he shouts out to Sonata, and I believe he says, hey, Sonata.
Sonata! If I defeat every one of these guys, you damn well better give me a black belt!
Which I think is it's pretty funny because, we skipped over this, but earlier when he alludes to something similar, when you said, yeah, I'm sure I could pick up judo pretty quickly. I'm sure I could rank up 5 times in a single day. And Sonata tells him,
Listen, Oliver. You can't earn 5 ranks in one day. Sorry, but it's not possible.
But why? I'll give it my best shot and work as hard as I can. Give me a chance!
That's impossible. It's about, it's just simply not possible. It can't be done. And the look of pure anguish on Oliver's face.
That line that he had was my favorite of the season, just from his face. And like, he literally just goes, but why? I'll give it my best shot.
Give me a chance.
Give me a chance. And like, to be honest, like, and then they explain, like, judo, it just sounds like the lamest martial arts. Like, they showed a bunch of clips of people writing tests and stuff, and like, they were just, I don't know. I respect Oliver. I think if you can throw a really big guy around, then you are a judo black belt, and the written component should not matter that much.
I mean, if we're all tried the same way, if we're all tested the same way, we're bound to be labeled as failures in one aspect. But if you look at someone in isolation, like, you can't deny Oliver's just, unmatched physical presence and his unmatched capabilities. Like, his fight against Tawaira, or basically the now biggest man in the show, is that, it doesn't matter how much muscle you have. It's how you can use it. And while up to this point, or at least close to this point, Oliver, I think, was the biggest guy in the show, he shows that he doesn't just rely on his muscle. He does have something working for him to be able to accomplish these things that, if you just put brawn against brawn, I mean, at least at the outset, you would think that Tawaira's got this. He's got the size, he's got the mass, but at the same time, Oliver's just able to pick him up and toss him around like he's nothing.
Yep. Maybe he should have maybe he should have studied more of his judo. Anyway, I don't know if we touched on, but that's how the episode ends. It ends in the middle of him spinning him around. Like, he spins him around in a loop, and it sort of fades into the credits.
Yeah.
which suck. I hate the ending credits for this season. It's
I was a little surprised. Like, I got so pumped up with your intros and outros from season 1, or rather season 1 part 1 up to episode 13. And when I heard the intro song as well as the outro song, the end credits song, I'm like, this is not what I know.
Well, you know what's funny? The podcast actually uses stuff. The intro to the podcast is the ending credits of the season 1, and the outro. Or no, the outro is the ending credits, and the intro is actually for season 3. So we haven't even got to that yet.
Okay.
Yeah, but I didn't use any from this season because the music is not great.
Yeah, I'd certainly advise against that. It's the outro's so catchy that I ended up, I don't know, putting my own fake Japanese words to it. I won't repeat them here, but it's definitely memorable. The tune. So seeing that kind of go away is a little disappointing. And, like I said, not having actually watched this show, the intro actually has, I don't want to say a 3D rendering of Baki, but a very nicely animated sequence of Baki just doing kata or shadow boxing. And I thought to myself, this is pretty cool. Like, if the rest of the show is like this, quality is not bad. I'm interested to see what the fights and the injuries are going to be like. No, it's just for the intro, and we cut to a traditional anime style.
Yep. All right. So Ryan, you have watched an episode of Baki, and you've listened to a season of Baki Taki, the #1 Baki podcast and #4 anime podcast in Croatia. What do you think, now that you've done that, do you think that Baki is a good show?
In a word, Steve, no. And I want you to know that I actually thought about this a lot. So while my one-word answer is no, I can't say that I didn't enjoy it. One reason is because I was doing it for this. This has been a great experience. Thank you so much for having me on. But another thing that makes me, want to enjoy it is actually a comment made by Naomi 2 episodes ago. She said that, the creators knew what they were doing. They know what the show is about, and they try to focus on just that. And in that sense, the show is a ride. It is a ride. It's well done. So if you believe that the author and the animators know what the show's about, aren't trying to make it something that it isn't, then it does a decent job. However, if the author and the animators are trying to make this a very serious anime with top-notch writing, I'd say they'd fall flat.
Yeah, that's fair. Man, I have no idea what the people who made this anime think. I've been trying to think of a moment where I could bring this up, but I found out that there is a Netflix documentary called Inside Anime, where they talk to a bunch of people who make animes. And Baki, of course, being a Netflix anime, they interview the director of Baki. And it was the weirdest interview I've ever seen. They ask him, like, a question about who would you rather fight, and the guy just goes, oh, none of them, like implying that, like, he doesn't my read on it was that he doesn't remember any of the characters in the show. And then the interviewer just asks, what was it like drawing Hanayama, like, out of the blue? I don't know why they brought up Hanayama. And then they asked him what his favorite quote was, and he said, I don't give a fuck. I don't even know who says that line. Was that a big line in this season? I don't know. Sorry, I had to pop in because I'm still thinking about this. But anyway, that's a weird tangent, but I don't understand the people who made this adaptation. But that's a topic for another day. All right.
Sure. I actually have a question for you, Steve. Sorry.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Well, maybe it's not fair for me to ask you if you think it's a good show, but I was hoping, can I possibly do the outro for this episode?
Could I do the outro? Is that what you're saying? Or could you do the outro?
If I could do the outro,
sure.
But feel free to say no.
Go for it.
All right, everyone, that brings us to the end of this episode of Baki Taki. If you're new to the podcast, be sure to like it, give a review, get comments going. We want the algorithm to work in such a way that we end up in the number, what was it, the number 3 spot in Korea? No, Croatia. My bad. Next week. And we get back into the top 5 anime podcasts in all of Canada. But outside of that, that is all the Baki we've got to talkie. Thanks for joining us. See you next week.
生ぬるい夢よりも熱すぎる Song Friday